I'm Jeannie Darneille, and I represent the 27th Legislative District, and that includes most of downtown and up to the Hilltop, around to the east side, all the way around to Point Defiance and the Tide Flats in northeast Tacoma. Then there's also the little fraction of Fife that we have and the town of Ruston.
Now, what has the legislature done so far to address the budget shortfall this session, and how has your role changed?
Well, my role has changed dramatically. For the last 2 years, I've chaired the General Government Appropriations Committee, which takes care of about 15% of the state's general fund budget. This year, moving into a role as vice chair of the Ways and Means Committee has meant that I now need to be familiar with and able to help make decisions about everything from education policy to health and human services, as well as general government and pensions and other kinds of systems like that I've never had to really have too deep a foray into in the past. So what we've done so far is actually the budgeting process over the last 2 years has been pretty much a continuous process. The governor had to step in and do some across-the-board cuts, but we came back in December and started some very deep cuts in our current biennial budget, which ends on June 30th. We now know that the cuts that we made in December were not sufficient, and so we have come back again. We need to make another $800 million worth of cuts or program changes, and we're in the midst of having sent a proposal over to the Senate for some early action here in the beginning of the session, and we expect to be making another supplemental decision around the end of March after our two forecasts come in. We get both a revenue forecast, which will cover through the Christmas sales period, as well as a new caseload forecast on who is actually seeking the services we provide that are entitlement programs.
Tell us about your bill to bring some safeguards into the tanning industry.
This is the third year I've had this bill before the legislature. Washington is one of only 11 states in the country that has no regulation whatsoever of the tanning industry. And we have about 1,000 tanning bed operators in the state of Washington, and yet we don't know for sure who those people are. We don't know what their training is. We don't know if they have trained their staff. We don't know if they allow wide open utilization of beds by everyone who purchases a plan. We don't know what their bulb change systems are. We don't know how they sanitize those facilities. And so there's one aspect of the bill that actually regulates the industry, requires registration, requires that the Department of Health can visit their locations, and requires a whole array of signage, and really trying to get at the fact that Washington has the 5th highest melanoma rates in the country, and yet we're one of those states that has no regulation of the industry. The more controversial part of the bill has to do with who can actually access tanning, and my version of the bill will actually restrict tanning to anyone over 18 years of age, so we don't allow minors to get unsupervised tanning, and recognizing, I guess, that tanning at an early age vastly increases a person's potential to develop a melanoma, which is the leading cause of death, the leading cancer cause of death in the state of Washington.
You have a bill about DNA collection this session. What does it do, and has your position changed on that at all this year?
Yes, this is a bill that's been before the legislature before. The construct of the bill is that we would modify current law, which is that if you are convicted of a certain level of crime, as you go into a prison setting, your DNA is collected. That's then run into a program called CODIS, which is a national database for DNA, to see if there might be other crimes that you could be linked to. This bill drastically changes that. It says that we want to collect your DNA when you are arrested. Now, I have been very opposed to this bill in the past, and I've long been a champion of civil liberties in the state of Washington and have worked hard to maintain those, secure those, protect those for the 10 years that I've been in the legislature. I did have an epiphany over the course of this last interim, having heard a speech and a presentation by a woman who represents an organization that's been trying to work on these laws across the country. She basically dispelled many of the assumptions that I had about how DNA is collected, what does it mean, who keeps it, how secure is it, what does it tell you, and what threats there would be to an individual who had their DNA collected. This bill has many protections within it, and so while it has raised concerns in the very community that I've long championed, it is, in my mind, a prudent step forward in not only solving crimes more quickly, but, so cold cases can be solved, for instance, but also can take people off the streets that are conducting violent acts, principally against women and children. When I looked at the whole array of our criminal justice system, I couldn't find any other single good idea to try to reduce violence against women and girls. And this one does. It's been proven to do that in other states as they catch people who are not there, and they're not arrested on one of the crimes that perhaps that would create a conviction. But when their data goes into the database, we can find that they have committed many, many other unsolved crimes. So that means a lot to families. That means a lot to victims to be able to find those perpetrators. But it also has exonerated people in those states as well who've been convicted of crimes that they didn't commit. And so we've seen that have a dual benefit, if you will. So the bill is moving through committee, as is the tanning bill, and hope to have both those bills passed this year.
Well, great. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.